All right, so rocket ship, Smartsheet.
Overnight.
Overnight. Didn't expect that. Tell us what Smartsheet actually does, because I assume most people here don't know Smartsheet.
So we're a SaaS company headquartered in Bellevue, Washington, just down I-5 here. We serve about 80,000 companies around the world, and most companies are putting workloads onto our platform, moving them from Excel and Google Sheets onto our platform to help manage processes, programs, projects.
And you've been doing that since 2006?
2006, we sold our first customer. We did.
Very nice. So in 2006, there were already pretty much options available if I wanted to do what you're doing. A lot of companies were just using Excel, and you were kind of bringing Excel, onto the web. What made you think you could compete with that momentum that was already there? Microsoft Projects and Basecamp and everything else.
Yeah, well, the investors, the prospective investors were very hurtful, actually, Frederic. They actually told us to our face. One guy actually said, "You will never sell a single dollar of revenue." I'm like, well, you actually don't sell the revenue, you generate revenue, but that's another point. But I think what people underestimated was the business user's ability to distinguish between products. And what I think the cloud era has done is it's given them a lot of choice. And people are able to differentiate between a numeric workload in Excel, for which it's amazingly well suited, and for managing work for which it is less well suited. The investors did not believe that in 2006, but that has played out.
Did that investor come back for your Series B or C? Or?
The company did. That individual is no longer with that firm.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you see to that?
No, but I have seen him around town a few times.
Very nice. So that early version of Smartsheet, what was that like?
The original version?
Yeah.
It was too hard. We were convinced we had this amazing mousetrap that we had built on the heels of having observed customers at our prior software company, Onyx, back in the 90s and early 2000s. And what we found was that people were struggling with keeping track of their initiatives, their programs, and everybody sort of nods their heads and say, yep, this is an issue in our companies, but almost no one's willing to lift a finger to solve it. They want it to come very easily to them. So what we got right initially was we identified what we wanted to do. What we got wrong was the vehicle to address the need. And it was, we came out of a business which you would consider enterprise CRM, and we often joke about it now, saying we were too enterprisey in our first version. And enterprisey is placing a whole bunch of value on things and building things that nobody cares about. What not many people care about.
What did you build that just didn't work there in this
I think
iteration?
one of the funny memories was we were so excited about this authentication and permissioning model. And when someone shared a Smartsheet to someone else, we wouldn't just let them share it, we asked them some questions. Like, Frederic, if I'm sharing to you, the system would ask me, what type of user would you like to make Frederic? I'm like, I don't care. I just want to share it to Frederic. No, we said, do you want to make him a power user or a mid-level user or a tertiary user? It's like, what are you talking about? I just want to share the thing to Frederic. So it was too complex. We asked people to think about too much at the beginning.
But it's an enterprise product. It's not supposed to be simple and user-friendly.
Yeah, well, I think the market is now speaking and saying those two can actually should peacefully coexist.
So you launched 2006, and it was an immediate rocket ship launch. You got,
Yeah, we almost ran out of software. It was incredible. Yeah, we
ran out of cloud.
No, that was one where our month-over-month revenue growth was measured in hundreds of dollars. So we were on pace to be $1 billion business by like 2180. It was very exciting. So like a couple years in, my wife asked, she said, so she asked it pretty nicely, but she said, weren't you supposed to be further along by this time? And we were very fortunate though, even though we had some of the product market fit wrong, we had the demand signal really well understood. And we actually were able to raise a few $1 million on the back of understanding and being able to tap that demand signal and then get an investor to believe that we could build to address that.
How do you keep motivated if it really isn't working, and you just have to believe that this next iteration is going to work out? Yeah,
I think you can't be blind, but I think when you have that validation from the market and people articulating that they have a need, if you solve it, we will pay you, if you solve it well, that is actually, what more can you ask for? It's actually very motivating.
Yeah.
Now, it gets a little bit cruel a couple years in when you're not actually scaling, and you keep hearing the signal, and you keep trying to iterate, and you are still not solving it.
Right.
It can become maddening, and I think that's where most entrepreneurs tap out. And one of the things that helped us is we had a group of seed investors and then Madrona Venture Group out of Seattle, and we felt a great accountability to those people too. So just when you think, boy, this is getting hard, and wow, it's been a couple years, you have to remember who else you're serving.
Sure. How long did it take you to find out that it just wasn't working?
I would say we sold our first customer 2006. We took our first outside round 2007 in the spring, and we decided to rebuild the product about 5 months after taking our round, which the investors loved, by the way.
And when you say rebuild, it was from a ground up?
Yeah, ground up rebuild. Now, the concept, very, very similar. The actual mechanism to deliver the product, totally different.
And that worked?
It did work. We were able to get enough conversion occurring where the timeline to achieve relevance was actually pulled in greatly. And but again, in terms of rocket ship, and again, this is a team of 8 or 9 people. This isn't like a team of 100 folks cranking away. So it's a very small community serving hundreds of customers at the time. What changed for us though was when we were chosen to be one of 50 launch partners in the Google Apps marketplace, and that's when things like dramatically changed. Holy smokes, we're getting customers out of Germany and Australia and Japan, and I guess everyone in the world is using Google Apps. Many people did, and that provided great momentum on that relaunch of our service.
Right. Now, you told me you did a lot of, you looked at metrics all the time,
Yeah.
just figuring out what worked, what didn't
Yeah.
work. That marketplace launch really worked for you.
Really worked.
And then you tried to do another marketplace.
We did.
And that didn't work out.
No. So I think this is one where when you see something work, and we were talking about our investments on something like pay-per-click, where we did very, very heavy instrumentation around which campaigns we deployed, how much we paid for those, all the way through their life cycle. And we went from spending a couple $1,000 a month in pay-per-click to spending $1 million a month. Like highly instrumented, absolutely worked economically. On the marketplace, huge winner. We're like, hey, this is contributing 30% of our bookings within 2 months. Now, granted, the bookings weren't all that big at that time, Frederic, but still.
So you went from 10 to 20, is
10
that
to
what
20,
you're
we were
saying?
killing it. So then another big cap came up and said, hey, we're going to launch a marketplace. So what's the obvious move? We're going to do another marketplace. But there were some fundamental differences with how that company was approaching it. Instead of Google, which was, we don't even care about the revenue share, we're going to bring you in, and because they're going to be using both of our products, Google Apps will become more sticky. That was their philosophy. The other company said, walled garden, you can only get to Smartsheet if you authenticate through my app, like all these hurdles. How many customers did we get after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars building it? Like 4.
Good ROI?
4. So that project was killed. And that was a really good lesson learned early around when you see a pattern emerge, you know, the variables you have to really inspect before you just go all in.
It's usually not a rocket ship when you're signing up 4 people.
No, that was a really good lesson to learn early. And the way we look at marketplaces now is a little bit more sophisticated.
Yeah, are you on more marketplaces now? Is that working for you in other ways?
Yeah, and I think Microsoft has a really interesting one with their O365. Salesforce does. Slack has a listing. There are a bunch of companies that now look for this cross-pollinating.
At some point, though, did you ever become a rocket ship?
Well, I live 4 doors down from the guy who led sales and marketing for AWS. So it's like, well, your neighbor's doing like 10 billion, and you're doing 150 million. So you're living in Seattle.
Is that what your wife was comparing? Is that what the problem was?
It's like, be more like Adam. No, it started to really accelerate in 2012 when we were at a board meeting, and our investor said, hey, Mark, have you ever thought of hiring a salesperson? I'm like, I don't know, Paul.
You did not have sales?
We did not have salespeople. We had.
Why?
Because we were gonna be SaaS, Frederic. It's like build a product, they buy it online. It's like kill it, right? It's automatic. Sure. It's not automatic. In many cases, especially if you're selling to non-technical consumers. A lot of our knowledge workers have no idea what an API is. So what we did was when we hired that first salesperson and we saw that we could compress the time it took for someone to understand the possibilities of our product, and we saw acceleration within domains. We went from 1 quota-carrying rep to today we have well north of 250. And again, it's that when the pattern emerges and when you see the economics work, then you pursue it vigorously. But we were very idealistic early. I mean, we actually thought when we started selling our product in 2006 that it was going to be relatively straightforward. We actually believed that because we in CRM had seen Salesforce do it. Well, I have a very deep appreciation for what Salesforce has done to achieve where they are.
They probably hired a salesperson before
they had a few
6 years
salespeople.
old.
They were very good salespeople.
What was the point where you realized that, okay, we finally made the turn?
I think when we sold our first deal over $25,000. That was a really big moment for us. And now you have to put this in perspective. Our average revenue per customer in 2010 was maybe $350 per year.
On a credit card, probably.
Yeah, many, like 80+% on credit cards, maybe even 90. So when we get that first call from the head of R&D at a very large beverage company, and he said, "Do you have an enterprise offering?" What do you think I said? We didn't. What did I say?
Yes.
Of course we have an enterprise offering. So we scheduled a call for the next week, and the phone rings, and a few of us were in the conference room, and we'd been deliberating right up to the call, like what are we actually going to tell him the number is? So we dropped a huge number on him, Frederic. And
define huge.
I said $5,000 per year. And there was silence on the phone, and I'm like, oh shit. We went too high. He goes, well, Mark, this is a problem because I can't even engage my IT team if it's under 50,000. So I hit mute and I said, darn, off mute. So we ended up getting that deal, but it was the first sign that there is, when you deliver value, you shouldn't, you have to break the context of what you've experienced for the prior few years. So when we hit the 25,000 marker, not that there was anything magical about it, but that set a material high watermark. And then it became 50, and then it became 100, and then it became 500, and then it became $1 million. And our largest customer pays us over $3 million a year now. And then the board member who says you should hire a salesperson, there's another really deep insight, which is you should do more of those deals. Thanks for the pro tips. It's like really good advice.
Smart move, hiring a salesperson.
But that was a really big moment for us. And then I think the $1 million account also was really monumental because at that point you really understand that you're materially important to your buyer.
To get that $1 million deal, did you have to kind of fake it as well?
No.
At that point you were ready?
No, I think at that point you have pretty deep relationships, and what the customer is doing is they're enrolling you also in what you need to do next to continue to climb the ladder. Mm-hmm. So at that point there's always this. The vendor has to believe the client needs to believe the vendor. And there are checkpoints along the way, and if you break that trust, you may lose that contract. So we've had a really healthy partnership on that.
Got it. What else, I love failure, so what else did you do that just didn't work? As you're trying to scale up.
So here's a great one. This is one where I accepted the market reality. And the market reality, this is, 5, 6 years ago, hiring was tough in Seattle. Amazon's cranking, my neighbor's hiring everybody, and sucking all the oxygen out of the air. And I let the company get to a point of accepting that hiring was hard. Now, we were still hiring people, but it could have been a lot better. So then I had this epiphany moment where a peer CEO had enrolled me in their playbook around building a high-performance recruiting team. And I was like, no, it's more market. Market's going to override. Well, we did that, and lo and behold, it made a huge difference. And that's a regret I have, one of the few regrets I have in the business where I should have done that 2 to 3 years earlier.
Has hiring gotten easier now?
Since when?
Since then or since the IPO?
Yeah, I think since the IPO especially. I think what I've found is, when I talked about the reasons for why we went public, there's obviously marketing, there's transparency for your big customers who want to understand if this company from Seattle and Boston and London is for real.
Bellevue, not really Seattle.
Well, yeah. You see, I say Seattle. We're about 5 miles away. And what I think has happened for employees, I totally underestimated, or prospective employees. So when prospective employee goes home to their partner or their spouse and they say, hey, I got an offer from Smartsheet, there's a discussion. Some of it's around benefits, base salary, bonus, and then there's the things called options. So honey, what do those options work? I don't know, there's a strike price, and they were really excited about the company's prospects, and they did a private round recently, so how do they price it? I don't really know. And that's it's a really not a real confident position. I've found some roles especially take much greater comfort in a restricted stock unit, which actually has a marketable value. So when they go home and they have the discussion, you can actually talk about something for real. And that has actually really improved, I believe, attributed to hiring.
And then you IPO'd last year.
April.
A lot of founders, I'm sure a lot of people here see an IPO as kind of, that's what I'm working towards. That's my goal. I've made it at that point. Is that what it felt like for you?
No. We walked onto the floor. We chose New York Stock Exchange to go out, and I had my 2 daughters there, and my wife was there. And I remember walking through the hallway onto the floor, and the whole floor is branded Smartsheet. So you're walking through there, and by the way, the day for the CEO on your IPO day, it's like, everyone else is having a blast. You are cranked from morning until the end of the day. But I remember walking through there, and the first thought was, shit just got real. Because what happens is you go from a small group of people around your boardroom table who are heavily invested in you to having people with mutual funds, mutual fund managers, sell-side analysts betting on you. And if you do not appreciate that accountability, you should not go public. And so that feeling for me was, new chapter has started. I have all these people who now expect us to perform. So there was never, honestly, never a second where it's like, oh, sweet, this is going to be super easy now. So we have our 6th earnings call coming up in September, and that, it's just that constant reminder of we're accountable to others. And as I shared with you earlier this morning, there have to always be things, I think for you to stay engaged in your job, there have to be things you look forward to. And I think now that we've been public, we have so much more capital, so many more people, so many more customers that there are more things to be excited about.
What are you excited about?
Well, I think you were talking about 2006 and isn't the market sort of already, weren't there other products like this? I would say no. I would say people were just starting to figure out, I can have my entire mailbox in the cloud? That's pretty cool. And a calendar too? The whole notion of high functioning docs and other collaborative tools, that was in its nascent phase. So even today, Frederic, 13 years later, most of humanity does not use these tools. So whether we argue over being in the 2nd inning or the 3rd inning, I'm going to say it's the first third of the baseball game. And our job right now is, what gets me excited is when I go to our customer conference and I see people getting that unlock code, and they're like, holy smokes, I don't need to be reliant on Frederic, the master comp sci PhD, to actually achieve something. And that is just starting to happen within companies. So now, at our largest company, we probably have a footprint of 70,000 people on the platform. In many other companies, it's a small minority, and that is starting to spread. So that is what I'm most looking forward to, people understanding that it's possible and available to them.
Sure. Now, you've been with the company. You were not a founder. You were brought in as the first CEO, employee number 6 or 7.
I love titles when it's 5 people. So who's the CEO?
COC, CTO, CMO, everybody.
I was an investor and the head of the company coming in.
All the other co-founders have left the company at this point. How did you hang on for all that time?
It's something that I knew when I joined. I knew I had passion for this space, and I had been disrupted by Salesforce at Onyx. And I had been in so many meetings where I saw business units picking up Salesforce and getting that ability to self-direct themselves to success, that I'm like, I'm going to get some of that. Because it's a hell of a good feeling too when your customer is activated. I was incredibly envious of Salesforce in those early days when I transitioned out of Onyx. As someone who I need feedback in my life, right? And I think had we continued for another 2 years the way we were doing in the early mid-2000s, I don't know if I would have made it actually. The win could not have happened soon enough in 2010. But that was almost 4 years in.
Right.
So what keeps going is if you feel like there's opportunity and signal that you can serve, then you chase it. And right now that's the mode we're in.
Right. Because one of your co-founders went off to build one of the co-founders went off to build a Roomba for picking up stones on fields, right? Do you have any side projects like that? Roomba for stones,
Yeah, well, Brent grew up on a farm, and he's got passion around that, right? So for me, the things that I spend my time on right now is I'm on the board of the information school, the UW. I work with kids through Year Up who, if you look at their profiles, there's no chance in hell they should be working at a tech company. And I have a lot of passion both in terms of technology enabling people, but also how do you bridge that opportunity divide right now. So I would say it's less project-centered and more people-centered in terms of what my passions are.
Do you still feel envious of Salesforce?
I have a lot of less envy, more respect. And I have a respect for a lot of those big SaaS companies that have been able to just year after year demonstrate growth. And you know, when I go to their conference, I still feel like there's customer love. And that's a pretty impressive thing to be able to pull off. So I respect the hell out of them for that.
Are you going to build a Smartsheet tower in Bellevue just to keep up with them?
No, not yet.
All right, that's your breaking news. That's all the time we have.
Thanks much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I need some traction. You need some traction. Let's get some traction.